Welcome everybody to our sleep issues workshop. This is a big deal, and this is the time of the year when seems to be the biggest deal because we're coming up on the darker part of the year, but then we also have this funny, weird tradition of changing the clocks right when we got into a rhythm. And so oftentimes that throws people off. And so this sleep becomes even more of an issue this time of the year, it seems. So I always look forward to teaching this particular workshop because I know that on this topic, no matter what, tonight is going to be a guaranteed win-win. So either I'm going to give you so much great information that you're going to be spellbound and just taking every little bit in and being action-oriented and implementing the things that you've learned to really optimize your sleep, and that will affect every other part of your health. Or I'm going to be so boring that you're going to fall asleep, which is good because then you're going to get more of the sleep that you need. So if you're on this workshop, then chances are that you, either yourself or someone you know, is struggling with sleep. And so tonight we are going to go over all the things that I've learned over the years that really help people knock it out of the park with getting the best sleep possible. And it really does affect everything else. So I do want you to be engaged this evening. If you're a note taker, get the pen and paper out so you can take those notes so that you can be action oriented. And so I just want everybody in fully tonight. Even if I don't see you on the screen there, I want to make sure that you're committed to getting the most out of the presentation so that you are really using your time wisely and you're changing your life in the process. How many people here think that sleep issues can affect your health? You can just do a show of hands or a raise hand. Anybody here think, yes, we would all agree it's unanimous. And how many people would guess how many people have sleep issues? Like, what do you think the percentages of people that have sleep issues? Do you think it's 1 in 100 or maybe 1 in 10? Nope, it's 7 in 10. 7 in 10 Americans are struggling with sleep in some way, shape, or form in any given week. And so it's definitely on the rise. People are having trouble getting to sleep. People are having trouble staying asleep. People are having trouble waking up. And it just goes over and over. They sleep too late or they wake up before their alarm and they wish they could sleep more. So it's affecting our health and it's becoming a cumulative thing that is leading to chronic issues where our battery is just getting drained. And you know what I mean by that. I want to just let you know that this is one of a series of workshops that we run that is all about different conditions each month. So next month, just before Thanksgiving, the week before Thanksgiving, we will be having our webinar, and it's going to be all about digestion problems. So I hope you can join us for that. Make sure you send us a text at 802-985-9850 to let us know you want to make sure that we get the links to you so you can be on this call, that webinar as well. So as I was saying, it can really sleep when it is cumulative. It will start to affect our battery, but let's just look at what are the benefits. Actually, let's see if I can move this so that this is, I want to move the title thing bar down. There we go. All right. So let's do that one more time. There we go. So the proper amounts of sleep on a consistent basis is cumulative in how it can benefit us. If you have good sleep over time, it has been proven to be associated with anti-aging, anti-inflammatory situations. It prevents mood disorders and dementia. It promotes a healthy BMI. Wow, actually it can help you with your weight and your ideal body goals. It's neurodegenerative disease protective. It protects from arthritis. It's immunosupportive. It's cardioprotective. It's anti-carcinogenic, and that means anti-cancer. And it even prevents musculoskeletal injuries. So there's benefits across the board. Pretty much any organ system you can think of in our bodies, it's actually a benefit for us to have good sleep on a consistent basis. And so when we don't do that, it's cumulative in the opposite direction. And that's when it really drains our batteries and then we get into trouble. So, you know, when you don't have enough energy, that's bad enough. When you've got things to do, and there are very serious complications when it really starts to affect your health in a big way. And we're going to talk about that tonight. So it's not just about, I'm dragging kind of today because I didn't get good sleep. It really is affecting many, many organ systems at the same time. And we're also going to discuss some of the specific sleep-related problems that I see most commonly in my clinic, things like sleep apnea, snoring, thoracic outlet syndrome, restless leg syndrome. But first, let's take a look at some of the more common things of how we help people every day. So we're going to discuss these. And I don't know if you know anybody that's struggling with these issues. If you yourself do, of course, you're going to get value from this, but maybe you know somebody that is not on the webinar that is struggling with these. And so you can share this information with them as well. And so let's create a context for these symptoms. Where do these come from? Where do they live? So I like to just look at this body signals program overall as this idea of different conditions have different symptoms that help us to recognize what that particular condition is. And symptoms, including having trouble with sleep issues, they are what we call body signals. And that's why we call the body signals program. And so it's really your body's way of signaling you, asking you for help, telling you you're moving away from health right now. And the question is whether or not you're listening. So how are you dealing with the signals when your body's telling you you're not getting the right kind of sleep? You're either not able to fall asleep, you're not able to stay asleep, or you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling rested. So all of those kinds of situations are body signals that your body's saying something needs to change. And oftentimes the signal or the body symptom is just the tip of the iceberg. It's actually a sign that there may be something more impactful happening below the surface that also needs to change and be addressed. So, you know, a lot of people, whether it's to do with other symptoms or sleep itself, they start to think, oh, I can't sleep, so maybe it'll go away. Let me just see how I go with this. Or, oh, well, it's just part of aging. I've heard that one before. Isn't this a normal part of female hormone changes that you just can't sleep as you age? Like, people really think that. Other people think of it as like, oh, you know, I just have to tolerate it and live around it. That kind of thing, like just deal with it, right? And oftentimes when people do that, the next step is, oh, they start to take just a little over-the-counter medication to try and manage it. Next thing you know, that's not working so well, or that has side effects, so now they have to take another medication to deal with that. Or now it's getting into some heavy-duty sleep medications that start to affect over time, the cumulative effect of those. The research is showing dementia and leading you towards really damaging your brain over time. So it's so important that we recognize this is a signal your body is giving you. And the question is, are you listening? And if you are listening with the antenna up of, wait a minute, my body is smart. So if it's trying to tell me something, what do I need to do to just add more health here, to add more function? What do I need to change so that my body gets what it needs? So I want you to think about it that way. And so when you get a symptom, when you do get a symptom, I also want you to recognize, is this the very first part of this problem, or has there been something going on for a while? So let's look at that as a reference by looking at this scale. Symptoms are telling you in what direction you're heading on this illness wellness continuum. So at the left-hand side, we have people dying an earlier death. And on the right-hand side, we have robust levels of health, and everybody is going to be somewhere on this continuum. And so the symptoms are going to help to tell you not just where you are on the continuum, but what direction you're heading. So if you notice in the middle here, you're not sick, there's no symptoms, but you're not necessarily robustly healthy either. So this is kind of the not sick zone. So we have the sick zone where you have symptoms and you know it. We have the not sick zone in the middle, and then we have true robust health on the other side. Now you'll notice that as we move away from health towards early death, towards symptoms, towards dysfunction, the first thing we come across is signs. And so the signs are something that we can measure that may show up before the symptoms ever do. And by the time you're getting the symptoms, you're already well on your way, moving away from health. So symptoms are there to tell you in which direction you're headed. And I want you to just really get that concept, because I don't want you to just try to deal with your sleep by just tolerating it, because over time it's going to be a problem. So now that we understand that, let's now go over where this fits in our overall better premises or better ways to even think about health overall. So we need a better premise so that we now can think about the questions we're asking and the direction we're going to go in when we're looking for answers. So that premise, starts with healthy is normal. That's the first part of the premise. Let's just say healthy is normal, unhealthy is abnormal. And so I'm going to just be straight with you right now. If you're not getting great sleep, no matter what your age, that's abnormal. You may look around you and see that it's common, but common is not the same as normal. So healthy is normal. That's our basic premise. The next part of the premise is that your body is smart. It was designed to be healthy, and every cell is always trying to move towards health. So if you're getting a signal, it's because your body is needing something. It needs you to change. You either are having a toxicity or a deficiency or both, but there's something interfering with that brilliant design of your body being smart and you being designed to be healthy. Now, the nervous system is the master system in the body. It controls everything else. So that's where we want to always make sure we're looking. If your health is going sideways and you're not at the level of health you want to be at, we want to go to the control system that controls every other system in the body, which is the nervous system. And then recognize that if you want to have a healthy body, not only do you need a healthy nervous system, but if you want a healthy nervous system, you need a healthy spine, because all of the messages are traveling between the brain and the body and back again, all through the spine. So if your spine's not healthy, it could be affecting your health. And we're going to cover tonight how it could even be interfering with getting good sleep. And not to ignore the fact that our life is unnaturally stressful. Modern life is unnaturally stressful, and it's setting us up in many ways to be pushed towards worse and worse health. And here's what I mean. Check it out, right? This is a very common thing that we see nowadays. And this is called living unnaturally. Again, it's common, but it is not a healthy normal. And so modern life, it's awesome, but it's incredibly divergent or different than what we were designed for. We don't eat the way we were designed to eat. We don't move the way we're designed to move. We don't think like we were designed to think. And we definitely are not sleeping the way we were designed to sleep. And it is so unnaturally stressful when we think about our sleep patterns today compared to 10,000 years ago, 20,000, 30,000 years ago. If we compare what our sleep patterns are like now, think about it. We didn't have the lighting, the technology, the iPhones. We have completely abandoned the natural design. And one of the most common consequences is sleep issues. So let me ask you this. How many people use their cell phone at night? Raise your hand. Yep, fess up. I know you. Yep. And that is my Achilles heel as well. And my Achilles heel is even when I am ready to like just turn off the screens, there's always like, I think I'll go to bed now. And then there's about an hour of things that I still need to do all around the house, like go over to the kitchen and do something there and go over to there and do something there and tidy that up. And it's like, by the time I decide to go to sleep, it's an hour later before I'm actually getting into bed. Anybody here guilty of that? Right? That happens to me more often than not. So, and I love projects. And when I get involved with a project, I just want to keep going with it. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, look how late it is. So this is definitely Achilles heel for me. And I used to think, oh, sleep is getting in the way of getting my projects done or living life fully. Like, I don't want to miss things. FOMO, fear of missing out. So, let me just finish reading this book. Let me just finish listening to this podcast, or let me just finish my emails, or let me, like, that is who I am. Let me just finish this, and sleep is getting in the way. And now I have a whole different experience with it. And one of the reasons I do is this book was a game changer for me. And it's a book by Matthew Walker. It's called Why We Sleep. And for me, even though I knew I should change my bad habits with sleep, for me to really change a bad habit, I have to unpack it and I have to actually get to the why. Why do I need to change it? It works in some ways that I get my projects done by not getting enough sleep. So I could justify it all day long until I read the book. And then in the book, they go over so much detail that it's like, oh my gosh, I have to change this. And then I decided to really commit to it. And that was when I committed to it, that was when I really started to address it. Now it is still my Achilles heel, but I'm so much better than I ever was before. And my daughter was congratulating me because last night we were talking on the phone and then she said, what time are you going to wake up tomorrow? And I said, probably around 7. And she's like, I'm planning to wake up at 8. And then this morning I actually slept until 8:30, which was fantastic because I was up doing a project like getting my sleep prep program ready for tonight, last minute things, right? Oh, I could do this a little bit better. I could fine tune this, right? And so I woke up this morning, I sent her a text. I slept till 8:30. She's like, you're rocking it, Mom. She's my cheerleader. So really, the consequences of not taking care of our sleep is very significant because it affects everything else. And I know we have demands, so many demands, but we really do have to make this a high priority because it's affecting our brains. If we are not getting good sleep, it literally is one of the things that is affecting our brains. And so I want to give you some examples of how significantly altered sleep can affect you. And these are real life examples. My midwife, from when my daughter was born, she's 22. So my midwife, when she was born 22 years ago, after my daughter was born, a few years later, she ended up, and she was somebody that I thought, wow, she lives a really healthy life. And she ended up dying from an aggressive form of cancer. And before she died, when I asked her, how could this possibly be that somebody that has lived such a healthy lifestyle could get cancer? And she said she figured it was because her sleep was so disrupted from attending births all the time. There it is. There it is. So she was the one that came to that conclusion. And that was at a time when I didn't really understand how significantly sleep could affect even things like cancer. And I remember as a kid, my mom, she had a full-time job, and then she helped my dad start his chiropractic office. She would be up late at night typing stuff up for the office. And that was all before we had screens in our lives. So I used to hear that tick, 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 tick of the typewriter downstairs as I drifted off to sleep. Before the light bulb, we as humans, we could sleep. We usually would sleep about 9 hours average per night. And we would sleep more in the winter and less in the summer. Once we got the light bulb, across humanity, sleep went down to 8 hours. And then now that we have screens, sleep has now dropped to 6 to 7 hours as the average. So these like modernizations literally are affecting the habits and the rhythms that are and it's setting them up to be very unnatural. And we're going to pay the consequences for that. Now, remember that our nervous system controls our hormones, and there's a gland in our brain that is sensitive to light. It's called the pineal gland. It looks like a pine cone, so it's called the pineal gland. And when it's daylight, the pineal gland runs the hormones that keep us awake. And when it's dark, it turns the awake hormones off and turns the sleep hormones on, like melatonin you may be familiar with. And so when we have all these screens and bright lights that are shining into our pineal gland, it gets confused and it starts to build into and lead to a stress response. So again, it's highly unnatural and we think we're getting around it. We have these devices that even measure whether we're getting good sleep or not. But there's been some concerns about the EMF radiation we get as we're measuring things all night long on our body, that could interfere with our sleep as well, at the same time we're trying to get better sleep. So stress is what it's all about. And the stress is coming at us in 3 dimensions, really. It's coming at us from, in more ways than we even are aware of. And so when we're stressed, it definitely takes its toll. And the stress is coming at us like from our thoughts, but also from toxins and also from traumas. So it's the physical stresses, the mental emotional stresses, and the chemical stresses that are leading to all the problems that we're having today. All right, getting on track here. So we've engineered movement out of our lives, which is a physical stress that we want. We want some physical stresses to challenge us. Sedentary lifestyle is more of a stress than exercising is. And that sedentary lifestyle is a problem. We used to have to move in order to eat, and we had to hunt and gather and so on, and we couldn't eat until we did that. And now we can have food thrown at us through our window. We don't have to go anywhere. And, it can be delivered to our door, so we don't have to move anymore in order to eat. And the things that we might choose to be eating, some of those things would not actually even be called food 200 years ago, right? So if you wonder where the chronic disease is coming from today, it's the skyrocketing heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all this chronic stress that our ancestors never had to face. It's getting crazier and crazier. And people all agree that things are getting more and more stressful. And it's when we eat well, move well, and think well that we start to go in the right direction. So, but we have limits to that. And there are ways that we can start to look at the physiology behind it, like why we need to pay attention to sleep. So let's dive deep into that and unpack that now. There's definitely a relationship between this primal design that includes the balance and the rhythm of light and sleep and hormones and function. And the natural cycles of light and sleep are so important. So if we kind of look at how this works, that pineal gland is the one that is sensing the presence of the light. Even though it's deep in our brain, it perceives the changes in light, and it will then secrete melatonin when the sun goes down. And otherwise, it will have a feedback mechanism, including the pituitary having an influence. And it'll just have different organ systems go through different changes and activities. So our food, our activity, our body temperature, all these things will change based on the hormone levels between the corticoid hormones, the ACTH, and the melatonin, like all of those different kinds of things. So you don't have to know the big words here, but just recognize that there is a primal relationship between light, the sun, the time of the day, and the hormonal control of our body. Hormones are very complex, and they control all the different functions. And when hormones go sideways, it affects everything. So this is really a hormonal discussion when we talk about sleep in many ways. Now, there actually was a study that looked at, well, what about the difference between sunlight and artificial light? And in Finland, they did this study, and they found that they had two groups of rodents who were exposed to either natural sunlight or fluorescent light. And the one group received the fluorescent lighting, the other received natural sunlight. Both groups experienced the same amount of light, and both groups experienced the same amount of darkness throughout the night. But after 1 week, the researchers measured the melatonin levels of the two groups, and they found it was very significant. The rodents that were given sun exposure produced far more melatonin at night than the ones that were in the artificially lit room. So if you're having trouble sleeping, one of the first things you want to think about is, how do I get more natural sunlight exposure? And it's not always easy to do with the way we've set up our lives and designed our lives. We talk about cavemen that lived in caves and they were in the cave when it was dark, but once it was light, they were outside all day long. If you look at modern man is much more of a caveman than ancient man, because we wake up, we get into a car, we go into a building, we're in the building all day, we get back into a car, and we go back to our house. We're just inside the whole day. We're in a cave the whole day and the whole night. So when we talk about cavemen, remember, they were in tune with the natural rhythm. So let's look more closely at those natural rhythms. We have something called a circadian rhythm. I think of it as the circle, right? Circadian. And in humans, it looks something like this, where you're up at 6 a.m. and it's when the sharpest rise in blood pressure occurs. And you can think about it like the light starts to show up, and it's time to get out and get that blood pressure pumping so that we can get out to our day and start moving around in our day. Melatonin secretion stops around 7:30 in the morning. At 10 a.m. is our highest level of alertness. And just think about our ancestors, right? That's right about when they want to be really going after the kill and hunting for animals. And just having that alertness and being able to pay attention to everything around them. We get to high noon, and then by the time we get, so this is the whole activity time of the day. When you've got the light, this is the time when you're going to procure your food, when you're going to be building your shelters, when you're going to be, scouting things out, interacting with other members of the tribe. Best coordination happens at 2:30, so you've been alert all morning, watching and waiting and watching and waiting and strategizing, and now you have to be coordinated to run and go after that hunt, go after that kill. You have the fastest reaction time in the afternoon, so you're getting the food that you're going to be bringing home to the rest of the tribe. At 5, you have the greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength, so this is when you're dragging that kill home. Can you see it? And then we have the highest blood pressure at the end of the night, 6:30 p.m., the highest body temperature where we're pumped up and warm. And then we start to lose the light, melatonin secretion starts in, and then we get this really deep rest, the deepest sleep happening around 2 a.m. And then we start to get a little chilly as we're getting to wake up. So can you see how it's so purposeful, all the different changes that our body goes through in this 24-hour cycle? So it's not like a clock, a 12-hour clock. This is a 24-hour clock that we're looking at. And so you can just see it totally makes sense. So back in the day when the sun went down, you went to bed. And it wasn't it was not the beginning of the second half of the day, which is what we do now, right? We get home, we turn the light on, now we have the second half of our day. And that is so common. It is of interest that every year on the Monday after we wind our clocks forward, hospitals report a 24% spike in heart attacks in the US. 24% spike the very Monday after the Sunday that we changed the clocks. That's how sensitive our body is to even just 1 hour of lost sleep. And even worse is the research suggests that it can take a week or more for our bodies to fully recover from the shift when we artificially change our times. So if you are going to be proactive, you may want to just gradually shift your work schedule by increments of 20 or 30 minutes over a few days instead of just slamming into a new time. All right, so now that we see the circadian rhythm there, let's recognize these natural rhythms and what hormones are happening at different times. So when we look at our, again, like a 24-hour day here, in the middle of high noon, we have our cortisol levels are high. Cortisol is not, a lot of it is a stress hormone, but it's actually the activity hormone is a good way to think about it. So when we need to have high activity, we need high cortisol levels. And so the circadian release of cortisol happens so that it's highest in the, it starts highest in the, getting higher in the morning, and then it starts to go down at noon. By 6 p.m. it's descending, and then we want it to continue to go down so that by midnight it's at its lowest. And then as the night goes on, melatonin starts to wear off, cortisol starts to come up again to get us ready for action when we get up in the morning. So that is the natural cycles that we should be seeing. And again, cortisol, it's thought of as a stress hormone. It's not bad, it's incredibly important. But it's important because it regulates a lot of functions and tissue health, but it has to be regulating those at certain times. So there are some people that they will, turn on the lights as the sun is going down, and that bright light can actually stimulate cortisol levels to be high. Or you just don't exercise your body enough to get exhausted so that you're ready to sleep, so that your body isn't really tired. And so when you do lay down, the cortisol levels, you're still thinking. And as you're thinking of all those things that you didn't get done or need to get done or not sure how you're going to get done, things that worry you, that increases stress hormones, which is the cortisol. And so there are some people that they will have their cortisol levels just high all the time. Or they'll have cortisol levels that end up being flipped, where they're high at night and they're dragging in the morning because they're exhausted because they didn't get good sleep. And so it really can interfere with the quality of everything. So now if we look at, again, the hormonal reboot that needs to happen every night, the things that contribute to that hormonal reboot are going to be things like exercise. So exercise will stimulate growth hormone. Growth hormone builds muscle, builds bone. It actually triggers the liver to make certain hormones that then help us with more bone growth and more muscle growth. And so this is really important, and the pituitary gland is secreting that, but it only happens if you're getting good sleep. So HGH is going to be secreted during healthy sleep to stimulate cell repair, cell growth, cell generation. And it has so many profound benefits on our mood, how well we are thinking, and it has a direct effect on our neuron health, our nerve cell health, and our hormonal pathways. Sleep turns out to be one of the most powerful anti-aging cellular regeneration treatments in the world, but we have to be getting good sleep. And the immune system is so expensive that it will drop if we're not getting enough sleep because it requires so much energy. One night of sleep that is skipped changes the blood chemistry in our body. Even our insulin profiles will change. And after 3 nights of having poor sleep, you actually can go into a type 2 diabetic pattern with your blood sugar. So all of these things are so linked to the chronic illnesses that people struggle with. So when we have chronically elevated cortisol because of not getting enough exertion, not doing enough exercise, plus having the chronic psychological stresses that we have all day long, and then we're thinking about them all night, and sleep deprivation, you now have a perfect storm that is a cascade that then starts to lead to all kinds of other chronic illnesses. And so we call this chronically adaptive physiology the 1-2-3 punch, and it is leading to those elevated cortisol levels, which then affect everything else. So not exerting and not sleeping, it keeps us in idle all day long, and that results in more and more sleep deprivation as well. So when we have lack of sleep, it causes parts of our brain to actually slow or shut down completely. And when we sleep, that's usually when our brain goes to the gym. So our brain is actually quite active when we're sleeping. It's packaging and recording the memories of the day for future access. We need good nutrition as well. So if you have good nutrition, but you don't have good sleep, it's like having good nutrition, but being a couch potato, right? We still actually have to have all 3 of these things happening all at the same time: how we eat, how we move, how we think, and the 4th one is how we sleep. So the effects of sleep deprivation on neurocognitive function, with chronic sleep deprivation, it leads to problems with attention, with working memory, with long-term memory, with decision-making, and then even just acute sleep deprivation, just like 1 or 2 nights of not getting good sleep, our attention will actually go down, especially our ability to have vigilance, and our long-term memory will be affected by that. So that whatever is happening during that time, sometimes it never actually gets registered to lock into the long-term memory in the future. So sleep deprivation, what is it that is causing it? It's our unnatural schedules. And what it does physiologically is it starts to affect our hormone levels that are important for sleep. So melatonin, you want to think of that as a sleep hormone. And when cortisol is up, melatonin turns down production. But it also affects other ones. The insulin sensitivity also gets downregulated. So insulin is what takes blood sugar out of the bloodstream and pushes it into the cells. It's also your fat storage hormone. And so if the sensitivity is downregulated so that your blood sugar is up, and that happens with chronically elevated cortisol levels, then we have to start producing more and more insulin, and then we become less and less insulin sensitive, and that's what leads to type 2 diabetes. If we're constantly exposed to light, this unnatural lighting, it confuses our physiology. So if you think about if you were a bear and you were hibernating as the rhythm of your year, when the days get longer and longer, that's when your body, usually it means it's summertime. And so in summer, bears, what do? They're going to eat, they're going to forage, and they're going to store fat. And they're going to store that fat so that they are ready for when winter comes, and when they lay down and hibernate, they're not up eating at that time. And so as the days get shorter, the body will start to burn all the fat storage. So if we are extending if we're extending our days by using artificial light, our body thinks that we should be getting ready for winter, and that we think that it's not time, we're not hibernating yet. So all the time we're just going into fat storage machines. And so leptin is one of the other hormones to look at. So it gets downregulated, and that when that gets downregulated, then our appetite will go up. Ghrelin also, it goes up, and that is the one that so these two are, the leptin and the ghrelin, they are I think of them as like yin and yang around appetite. So leptin, it is what we would call the satiation hormone, and then ghrelin is the appetite hormone. And so once you eat enough and you feel satiated and feel full, the leptin should come up. But when we have unnatural lighting, the leptin goes down, and so we end up having more of an appetite than we should. And then the ghrelin stays up, and so that makes us, again, just continue to have an appetite. And when this is all happening, the cortisol is up, and that makes us crave carbs, because cortisol is usually the fight or flight hormone. And so if something's chasing us, we want to have instant energy, which is carbs. So we'll tend to crave carbs more. And then the insulin, again, we already talked about that. That leads to more fat storage. So all in all, sleep deprivation will push people towards gaining weight. And that's a big deal for a lot of people. And when we start to see how the weight is gained, it tends to be gained centripetally, so around the midline, that belly fat. And so historically, our ancestors only experienced chronic low-grade stress when there was a famine. So of all the different stresses that our ancestors would encounter, most of them were all just short-term stresses, like the weather coming in and shelter, or an animal or something like that. But the only chronic stress that we had was famine. So anytime that we have chronic stress levels, our body thinks, oh, this must be a famine, so we better store fat now, right? What a brilliant design. If we were living in our natural state, then it would be the key thing that would save our lives if a famine came along. But in our culture, in our modern day world, we don't have a lack of food. We have malnutrition and a lack of nutrients, but we don't have that lack of food. And the food we're eating can push even more and more of this belly fat. So, I know you all love doing exercise and strict dieting and tons of burpees trying to deal with your belly fat, but could you imagine if the solution for your unwanted body fat was simply better sleep? Like, how great would that be, right? So I do want you to pay attention to this. And again, it comes right back to our smart body. Our ancestors, our body was designed to really work well when there are famines, but our body is not actually structured. It doesn't have a mechanism when there's too much food, abundance. We don't have a mechanism for that. We actually don't adapt well to abundance and plenty, lots of nutrition around. We deal very well with famine, and we have the design for it. But we're also not designed to not get good sleep, and we're not designed to have this artificial light. And so we have to use our smart part of our brains, our prefrontal cortex, to develop the habits that are going to now use the tools that we have in a useful way without having those tools destroy our health. Okay, so if you have sleep deprivation, you may notice that you get irritable, that you don't have as good cognitive function, your memory lapses or loss. Sometimes it impairs your moral judgment. You could have severe yawning, even hallucinations, and even symptoms similar to ADHD. Wow, how many kids are being put on medications when really they just need to get really good sleep? It can impair the immune system. Again, we talked about the risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, increases in heart rate, risk of heart disease, also increasing the increased reaction time and decreased accuracy, tremors, aches. So that's all muscle stuff that happens. And then it can suppress growth. There's the risk of obesity and decreased temperature is another side effect of sleep deprivation. And I do want you to know I used to think wrong about this. I used to think if I don't get good sleep for like 3 or 4 nights, on the weekend, I'll catch up. Yeah, doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You cannot erase sleep debt with one good night of rest. And so we end up actually losing it. So the other thing that happens when we sleep is that our brain actually shrinks. And when it shrinks, it makes room for the cerebrospinal fluid to flood through all the cells, and it flushes toxins out when we sleep. And so when we think about the importance of that, and yet when we look at what are the most common causes of sleep deprivation, the most common cause is it's voluntary. We just do it ourselves. We're the ones that's choosing. Nobody's making us do it. We're the ones that are doing it. We are the only species on the planet that voluntarily doesn't get enough sleep. And that's because of our work schedules, our study commitments, our environment, our sleep habits. Those are the most common causes of sleep deprivation. But if we start to get into that sleep debt accumulation cycle, if we have 2 weeks of less than 6 hours of sleep a night, it reduces our alertness and performance to a level equivalent to a full 24 hours of sleep deprivation. So if you think of like going without sleep for 24 hours and how brain dead you are from that, the same level happens if you just have 2 weeks of only 6 hours of sleep. A week of only 4 hours of sleep a night is the equivalent to 2 to 3 days without any sleep. So it really does accumulate, and it really does have an impact. So what are the best practices for sleep? Well, first off, we want to use the circadian rhythm as a guide. So I want you to really get real with this and just realize that you're manipulating your physiology every day. So ensuring adequate exposure to natural light is an important part of this. So don't just think about what am I going to need to do to get good sleep. I actually do want you to think about what do I need to do when it's daylight? How do I actually get some of that natural sunlight? Sometimes we can use a Fitbit or some sort of device, a wearable device, to actually measure what the quality of our sleep is. And what you want to shoot for is 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Now, there are studies showing that once you're over 65 years old or so, or 60 years old, in that range, that oftentimes 7.5 hours of sleep actually can also work very well. So you can, as you age, you actually may be able to get away with a little bit less, but not less than that. You definitely need to have at least that. And I also want you to know that napping is of value. Napping can, if you need to be getting those 8 hours in, 8 to 9 hours in, and you just didn't get them during the night, taking a nap actually is useful. And you do want to limit your naps to 30 minutes. So no longer than 30 minutes. 20 minutes seems to be the sweet spot, because otherwise that could actually affect your sleep later on at night when you want to be getting that deep sleep. And so you also want to recognize that once you've slept 5.5 hours, that's the bare minimum. But then after 5.5 hours, up to 7 hours is when real repair happens to our tissues. So the first 5.5 hours, the body is doing other things for your sleep. It's not going after repairing tissue. So if you need something that needs to be repaired, and we all need a little bit of repair every night, but if you have an injury, you definitely need more than 5.5 hours of sleep. So you want to make sure that you're getting 5.5 to 7 hours, because that's when the crucial real repair happens. And now think about the environment where you're sleeping. You want it to be a sanctuary. So dark and quiet and comfortable. And when I say dark, that means like no light exposure, no alarm clock lights, no TVs, no cracks around the shades, no little red lights on this device and green lights on this device. Like, you really do want real darkness, because the body actually picks it up. And some people, they say, well, I have a mask that I wear when I'm sleeping to block out the light. It turns out that all over your body. It's photosensitive. So your skin is picking up the light also. So it's not just an eye mask that's going to be the answer. Now, this is tough if you're a night shift person. And night shifts actually do take quite a toll. So I really recommend people get off of them as quickly as they can. The other thing about the sleep sanctuary, it turns out that a cool room is better than a warm room. 60 degrees turns out to be the perfect temperature. I first learned this when I had my daughter, when she was born, and I was researching what's the best thing for my child. And one of the things I read was that 60 degrees was the best temperature. I thought it was a typo in the book. Like, that can't be right. It must be 70 degrees. But it turns out actually 60 degrees, even for infants, is the best temperature to get the best sleep. Then also think about the blue light that we're exposed to with screens. So having an E-fast means having no screen time before you go to bed. And at the very least 30 minutes before bed, no screens. For some people, that means 90 minutes that they really need of no screens. So shut off all those electronics, the TV, the iPad, your social media, the computers, because it all just disrupts your sleep patterns. There's something to be said about the LED lights that we all are using now as well, that they also can be detrimental, similar to screens. So if you think about, again, ancient man, it would have been a fire light, would have been the light, or a candle would have been the light. So it turns out that red light, especially at a 15-degree angle down, is the most healing light for our bodies, and it actually stimulates melatonin. So having gazing into a fire before bed is actually quite a good thing for sleep, as far as that type of light going into your eyes. Let's see. So yes, remember, so another technique, another hack for our modern life is to use these blue blockers, so blue light blockers. So these are the really low cost, just basic safety glasses. Any you guys or gals out there that do any kind of like work with machinery, that kind of thing, you'll recognize that this is just safety goggles, but they work fantastic for blocking the blue light. So many, many years ago, we got a bunch of these at our house, and when the sun goes down, these things go on. Now, I got a little bit more sophisticated and got a pair that was a little bit more designer, right? But you can find them anywhere, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on them. I think they're like, I don't know, under $10, $6, even cheaper if you get them in bulk. So those are a good tool just to deal with the blue light that is coming at us in all directions. All right, and then we have to look at alcohol and caffeine, because caffeine is a stimulant. Some people can tolerate it better than others, but that can be something that can keep us up. Nicotine too close to bedtime, apparently that also can be stimulatory. And drinking alcohol, if you're going to drink alcohol, you want to drink it earlier in the day. Earlier is better, because it can interfere. Even if you feel like you're passing out from drinking too much, that is not going to be a good quality sleep that you'll be getting. So people that think, oh, I'm just going to have a little, glass of something to help me with my sleep, don't fool yourself. If it's alcohol, it's not going to be helping you. And then also just look at the household culture. It's much easier if you don't have morning glories and night owls in the same house. So if everybody's on the same rhythm, it's much easier. Like, okay, we all go to bed early in this house. And if you can get everybody on board and agree to live the same way, it's going to be much easier to get a set schedule going. And for some people, it's going to take setting an alarm clock at night to tell you it's time to get ready for bed, and respecting it the same way that you pay attention to that alarm clock that's getting you out of bed in the morning. So going to sleep on a set schedule is really key. Now, some people have asked me about this, so I'm going to share it, that the research does show that sex is one of the best sleeping tools in the world, because it's going to give you some of that vigorous exercise, but it also releases oxytocin, and that oxytocin actually slows the release of cortisol. So how about that? Drinking early, sleeping more, having more sex. You can do this. Can't you see yourself? You can do this. All right. Now, other best practices. Staying away from foods that will disrupt sleep. And again, it's going to be some of the like the caffeinated, even chocolate for some people, the theobromine gets the circulatory system running, and that can actually make us more alert. And different people may recognize even very specific foods for them that seem to disrupt their sleep. Having your last meal be 2 hours before sleep, or if you're going to eat later than that, just eat very lightly. For some people, drinking warm, unsweetened almond milk with a little bit of vanilla in it, and maybe a few drops of stevia, it actually can increase your serotonin in your brain, and that may help you sleep. And then I'm going to show you some other natural supplements that can help to bridge the gap if you're having trouble with sleep until you can get your sleep hygiene in a set rhythm. Now, omega-3s, which are fish oil, if you have them at optimal levels, the research shows that that actually provides resilience to sleep deprivation. So if you are going to be stressed with not being able to get the sleep that you need, the omega-3s are going to be a key to making sure you have plenty of those. Activated charcoal, you can think of it as an extra detox organ. So if you're not getting enough sleep for the brain to shrink so it can be washed of the toxins, the activated charcoal may be able to go after some of those toxins. So again, these are just stopgaps, not anything you want to rely on a regular basis. You want to actually get that really good sleep. Okay, so if we look at the best practices for supplementation, if you do need that, these are some things that I use in the practice. Essential oils, lavender and myrrh are both excellent oils to help you calm you and help you go into sleep. Herbs that are useful, chamomile, just a cup of chamomile tea can be lovely to settle you in and get you ready for sleep. Kava can be very useful to just drop the stress levels down. Chaste tree is interesting. It's a hormone. I mean, it's an herb that actually provides the precursors to melatonin. So the ingredients that you need to make melatonin in your body, chaste tree can provide those. And so for many people, getting into a rhythm with chaste tree can really help if they have low melatonin levels. And it does take a while, a few weeks, sometimes a couple of months for it to kick into a strong provider of the ingredients for the melatonin. But again, it can be very useful for folks. Valerian can help to drop the stress down, poppy as well. And for some people, they use hemp and CBD. There is some research that shows that THC can actually interfere with good sleep. So you want to be thinking about the hemp or the CBD rather than the medical marijuana. Some people have found that it's useful, but other people have found that it's troublesome over time. What about different vitamins? So magnesium is definitely one of the prime supplements that I find helps people the most when they're having trouble with sleeping. Choline is another one because that's one of the core things in acetylcholine, which is one of the things we need to have that right balance of the hormones for sleep. Nivaton is another one that many people test strong for that helps them. Orchex also is kind of a mineral blend that helps to supply the minerals that our body needs in order to go through the functions of sleep and dealing with stress, turning the stress switch off, all the minerals that we use up when we're stressed that are not available when we need to sleep. So the Orchex can be great for that. For some people, Antronex is a kind of antihistamine, kind of a natural antihistamine. So for some people, their sleep is being disturbed because of some sort of an allergic type of response that's keeping cortisol levels high. Mintrans is another mineral blend that seems to be calming. For some people, Cortisol Manager is a supplement that if they don't have the right rhythm of their cortisol levels and they're kind of like keeping them high at the wrong times, that can help to reestablish that rhythm. There's another product called Setitol. One of its main ingredients is magnolia that seems to help some people with sleep. And then even just tryptophan, as understanding that that is a significant amino acid for sleep. Other best practices. are things like using sound therapy. So using white noise or nature sounds or earplugs if you have to block out unwanted sounds. You can also remember that vigorous exertion is important to get good sleep, but try not to do it any later than 4 hours before bed, because sometimes it can keep you ramped up so that you your cortisol levels stay high because you've just done the vigorous exercise. The circulation is flooding through your body. Now, there's a technique that's called EFT tapping technique, the emotional freedom technique, and I like to introduce that to every member of my practice as a tool. And it is actually something that you can use when you're lying there in bed and you're not sleeping. And it's because you're thinking about something, or you're just like, I don't even know what I'm thinking about, but I'm not sleeping. I noticed that. You can actually do the tapping technique before you go to bed if it's become a problem that you're not getting sleep each night, or just that random night where I should be sleeping right now. I've been sleeping good, but this night I'm not. And then you can just do that tapping. I used to use it with my daughter when she was a little girl, and we would just do the tapping and boom, within 5 minutes, she's asleep. So again, it can be so useful as another technique. People can also use breathing as a technique for helping themselves to just turn the stress switch off and get into a sleep rhythm. Box breathing, which is where you're taking a breath in with the same count, holding it for the same count, breathing out with the same count, and then holding it before you take the next breath in. So equal time, equal seconds. Maybe it's 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold, and so on. Another one would be the 4-7-8 breath, where you are breathing in 4 seconds, holding it for 7 seconds, and then a more delayed 8-second out breath before you start the next breath in. So those are ones that will tend to calm the body and get it ready for sleep. And if you're just lying there thinking, I sometimes will use the 4-2-1 technique. And so the 4-2-1 technique is, first you think about 4 things that you're grateful for. And they can be any things at all. And sometimes I have like 4 things that are always my go-to ones, so I don't have to search around like, what am I grateful for? So, but maybe that very day you had 4 things that you could be grateful for. And it kind of just gets you into that uplifted mood rather than a worried mood. And it uses the prefrontal cortex, which can help us gain perspective on things rather than that hindbrain, reptilian brain that is in fight or flight. Then after you've thought of 4 things you're grateful for, you can think of 2 things that you love. And it might be your pillow. I love this pillow, or my daughter, or whatever it is. Just 2 things that you just love. And then 1 thing that you could use some help with right now on this, and just release it. Like just say, I could use some help with this, and then just let it go. And oftentimes that is going to help you to just drop into a calm sleep, ability to just fall asleep. In healthy normal, you should be falling asleep within 5 to 15 minutes of laying your head down. So you want to think about that. So if you're still awake 30 minutes later, something's getting in the way of that natural cycle, and you want to start looking at what do you need to change. Now, jet lag can certainly, in this modern life that we have, where we're traveling everywhere all the time and going through different time zones, jet lag can be definitely something that interferes with sleep. And I do have a handout that goes through jet lag acupuncture points. So the way that it works is that when you get on the plane, you look at what time it is in your destination. And then on the chart, it turns out that in the meridian system in the body, different organs will be active at different times throughout the day. And so they usually go in 2-hour blocks. And so you just look at what time is it in my destination where I'm going to be, and which organ should be at the highest level of function and activity at that time. And then the chart will show you a point that you would stimulate that correlates with that organ, to just get that organ active and stimulated. And then 2 hours later, if you're awake, you can look on the chart and then you stimulate the next organ. And so by the time you land in your new destination, you can actually reacclimatize your body to that time zone even before you get there. I have people giving me rave reviews on this. And this was actually a technique developed by a chiropractor who used acupuncture in his practice as well. I also find that when I go to a place, if I can just stay awake at the normal time for that time zone, then that helps me to get back into a sleep rhythm faster. So I will use, rather than caffeine, I like to use chocolate as a way to just keep me a little bit more alert until it's time to go to sleep. And then sometimes melatonin, people will use melatonin. I don't use it myself, but many people, if they have trouble with jet lag or going to another place and having to accommodate that, that combination of chocolate and melatonin can be useful. So now let's talk about the sleep issues that I encounter in the practice. And these are the most common patient presentations that I come across. And this is people that we help every day. So the first things first, though, let's look at a review of why chiropractic is going to help these things. We know that the brain controls everything, and it has to get the messages from the brain out to the body and back again. As long as the messages get out and back without interference, you get to be healthy. And so your nerve supply is your life supply. And it's the flow of intelligence that keeps you healthy and healing. And your spine is the suit of armor that is protecting the nervous system as it's carrying the messages back and forth. So I know I've showed you the spine before, but again, remember we have these 24 movable bones that are protecting the spinal cord, and we have the nerves that are coming out from between the bones. So that's the anatomy of the spine. But if we look at just like, well, how does the spine work? Like, how does it work? Simple is this. The brain has to get messages from the tissue cells up to the brain. And then the brain, once it receives the messages from the cells, it can send the message back down to the cells to tell them what to do. So we call this the safety pin cycle. And remember, garbage in, garbage out. So we have to have accurate information going in order for the brain to give an accurate response and run the body properly. And so as long as we have a complete cycle, the nervous system is working, and that is the best chance that our body is going to be healthy. But if anything interrupts that flow of messages, so we're no longer getting accurate messaging up to the brain or accurate messaging coming out from the brain, then it interferes with our body's ability to be self-regulating and self-healing. And I like to think of it, the spine as almost like a fuse box also, where those nerves are going to different rooms in the house. And those rooms are different organ systems. And so if we have anything interfering at any vertebral level, it can start to interfere with certain organ functions, depending on what that nerve distribution is. So now that you have that big idea, let's look at this idea of when there is a subluxation, a misalignment of the vertebrae, the joint misalignment, that leads to soft tissue damage, which then leads to inflammation and nerve irritation. Then your smart body will spasm the muscles around that joint, trying to protect it from being irritated more and more and more. That fixates the joint, so the joint is no longer moving. And then when the joint no longer moves, the brain no longer gets signaling from that area, and the brain starts to lose track of what's actually happening there. When it loses track, it actually will start to elevate cortisol levels. It'll go into stress hormone production. And so that's what happens when we have subluxations, our cortisol levels go up. When cortisol levels go up, that means that's the stress hormone production. But what also happens is melatonin is downregulated, and our blood pressure is going to go up, and we're going to downregulate the insulin sensitivity. It's going to weaken our connective tissues, and the immune system is going to downregulate. It's because it needs a lot of energy. So if we're low on energy, immune system is going to shut down. If we have a tiger to fight, we want all of that energy to go to fighting that tiger. So we temporarily will downregulate the immune system, and there will be inflammation and swelling with high cortisol levels as well. And so basically, when we weaken connective tissues, that can break down our joints. And that soft tissue can make you all wrinkled and saggy so that you're sick and tired and wrinkled. And so that's not going to be good at all. And so what happens then? Let's now look at the three different conditions that I work with quite a lot. So sleep apnea is one of those. So does anybody here know anybody that snores, right? Or have you ever run into them, right? So, some people, they snore all night long and they're world-class snorers, right? And then there are some people that don't snore much, but when they do, they wake themselves up with it. But it can then suddenly interrupt our sleep if we're listening to somebody else. And then there are the people that they're not necessarily snoring, but all of a sudden the rhythm of their breath, you don't hear it anymore. And then you're thinking, wait, something's wrong. They're not breathing. And then all of a sudden there'll be this big inhale. And so if you're a light sleeper and you're sleeping next to somebody who has apnea and they're not sleeping, breathing in a rhythm when they're sleeping, then that can disturb other people's sleep. So, and of course, you know, every family must have an Uncle Jimmy, I would think. Like Uncle Jimmy, you know, you go to a family campground and, you know, he literally needs to live in another house. He snores so bad. And so they, you know, oh, they have deviated septums, it's genetic, or they have something to do with their anatomy. But really, what you realize is when Uncle Jimmy drinks more beer during the day, there's a lot more snoring at night. And so there's definitely situations where it's going to be our habits that are actually promoting snoring and sleep apnea. And it may be that we have physiology and anatomy that predisposes you to it, but it's really clear that lifestyle is going to increase and or decrease the symptoms that are expressed. So what we notice with Uncle Jimmy is that if there's no alcohol or white food like sugar or pro-inflammatory foods, then there seems to be no snoring. So if pizza and beer, forget it. The snoring's going to happen. So again, it comes to the choices we're making and the habits that we have that are going to either turn it up or turn it down. And what happens is there's this turbulence that goes through the nasal passages. And so when you're in certain positions, sometimes the anatomy is going to change. The back of the throat can close down, and this whole nasopharynx area here, the tissues start to get closer together or they approximate. And then there's a little bit of room for the air to get through. And so you start to have that potential for snoring. Now, if you have a deviated septum that changes the airflow, that might start to make noise, but you're literally throwing gas on the fire when you add the pro-inflammatory foods and the alcohol, and that will actually cause the tissues to swell. And then that's going to crowd the space even more and shut the space down more, which is going to increase the turbulence, which then increases the breathing interruption. And, you know, there was another study that actually showed that prolonged sitting can contribute to snoring. And by way of that, maybe also to sleep apnea. And this study was done in 2017, and they found that anybody that's doing prolonged sitting, even if they were to move their calves a little bit, like as if they were pumping the brakes with their foot on and off, if during 4 hours of sitting, if they did calf exercises during that time, their snoring was reduced by 67%. That's a lot. So again, the reason they said was that if you're sitting and you're not moving your legs, you can start to retain fluid in your legs. And that when you finally do lay down, that fluid gets redistributed up into your neck and your throat and contributes to snoring. So turns out that moving your body is essential, and it can actually help with sleep apnea and snoring as well. So, you know, what about sleep apnea? Okay, there's got to be a better way than this, but this is the common way of people dealing with it. I mean, apnea means you're getting less oxygen into the body and less oxygen into the blood. And so that makes the heart work harder to pump the blood around that has the oxygen that it does have. And so it literally can increase your heart rate, increase blood pressure. And there actually is a correlation with sleep apnea and heart disease and stroke. And it turns out it's the same correlation as obesity and heart disease and stroke has. So, and oftentimes obesity can contribute to sleep apnea. So, you know, this is the option that people tend to go with, but, you know, it's going to be a better way. So let me tell you what I find in my practice. Whoops, let's carry on here. There it is. I find these are the subluxation patterns that I see the most often. And when I look at these subluxation patterns, that C1 to C3, that's the nerve supply, or at the top here, that goes right up to all the tissue in the throat and the soft palate, the nasopharynx. That's controlled by this C1 to C3 area.
Are we supposed to be able to see something like a slide or something?
You're not seeing my slides?
No, I tried. Yeah,
The
no.
whole time you haven't seen any of my slides?
I tried to interrupt once before. I don't know, and then I just took it off of mute.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that's
I thought this
terrible.
time I'll interrupt. Yeah. I haven't
Okay.
seen, I don't know unless I'm just starting this program tonight, so I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong. Maybe it's
Oh
something.
my goodness. I thought I was screen sharing and I wasn't. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna just carry on where I'm at.
Yeah,
It's too late to start the whole thing over again. However, I'll make sure that there's a recording that is a good recording before I put it up on the website. But here you guys are live. Let's carry on. Oh my goodness. Thank you for interrupting me with that. So
Okay,
let me
I got the charts all right. This is Polly. I got the charts all right.
You did?
Yes.
You were
maybe
able to see them. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. Slideshow.
I was kind of new to this, so I thought maybe it was just something I was doing
Okay,
wrong.
you know what? Try this, Gina.
Okay.
Try going up into the right-hand corner
Yeah.
of your screen where, and it says speaker, there's different views.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can make it so that.
Oh, that's a different view. Oh, okay. There's different ways to do this.
All right,
All
so.
right.
Oh, I just lost it now.
All right,
you-
that's the gallery. That's all of us peoples. Let's
Okay, let
see.
me bring it up again here. Let's see. It looks like oh, let me see. Let's try that one more time. My screen sharing has stopped, so I'm going to share it again here. Let's bring up the right one. Looks like it's this one. And I'm going to just go right to my slideshow.
I see it now.
Okay, so let me go back to the slide that I was on here. We're good. We're in good shape. There we are. Okay, and so we'll go to the current slide. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, great. And everybody else can see it. Polly, you can see it too?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for helping me get this right for everybody. All right, so I was pointing to the C1 and to the C3 because that's the nerve supply that goes to the soft palate and the nasopharynx. But this C6 and 7, let me just move this out of the way a little bit. There we go. C6 and 7 is at the bottom of the neck. And this is actually a nerve control to the sinuses. And so if there is inflammation in the sinuses, if there's sensitivity there, then adjusting this area C6, 7 at the bottom of the neck can actually help that. So I kind of think of sleep apnea as a chemical type of subluxation where it's really the lifestyle choices and the diet style that can compound it. Another one that we encounter is thoracic outlet syndrome, where people are just tossing and turning due to pain and muscle soreness in the neck and the upper back, and they're restless and they wake up and they can't find a comfortable position. And so oftentimes if there's a subluxation in the thoracic spine, it's one of the narrowest parts of the neural canal. So it doesn't tolerate inflammation as well. So it can be more symptomatic. And just innately, the body will toss and turn, twisting and trying to open up the foramina to try and relieve the pressure on the nerves and increase some room for that nerve to breathe in that thoracic spine so it can exit. So again, it's that mid-back subluxation that we oftentimes will find that with correlating with thoracic outlet syndrome. And, you know, sometimes people they'll be totally exhausted emotionally and psychologically, but not physiologically. They haven't really drained the battery with physical exertion. And so mentally, they just get woken up out of their sleep. Their mind kicks in and then they're just up all night. So those are some of the things. A swollen body will wake us up and our minds then also keep us awake. And so these are the areas that I often find when people have that going on, tossing and turning and just not being restful in their sleep. it's oftentimes in this area, and it tends to be more physical, like they're just not getting enough exercise, or their posture is the thing that is causing the stress in this area, poor posture, too much screen time, that kind of thing. And then we can get to restless leg syndrome. So again, oftentimes I'm going to see this in the lumbar part of the spine, but basically we have different signals that move across our nervous system, and pain signals go at a slow rhythm, a slow twitch. Movement signals go at a fast twitch. So it's not uncommon that the body will move to try and override pain signals by using movement. And movement is, again, it's going to stimulate a faster twitch along that nerve. And so that can just quiet down the pain signal, which is a slower twitch. Sometimes, you know, sometimes if your husband has restless leg, that's keeping you awake, right? Because they're moving around all the time, right? You don't have restless leg syndrome. It's your husband's restless leg syndrome that is the problem. So you need to bring your husband in to get adjusted. But again, oftentimes there are drugs for these things, and they all have side effects. Some people will tell you that the restless leg syndrome is a genetic thing. Usually they go there when they just can't think of anything else that it could be, so it must be genetic. Oh, it runs in the family too. Sometimes it's the stress levels that run in the family. So with restless legs, oftentimes it's going to be this lower part of the spine, L4 and L5, the nerve supply that goes down into the legs, and then the sacrum as well. And again, it's just having to do, sometimes there could be some irritation in the nerves that would be triggering pain, except that if you start to move, right, like in that sciatic nerve distribution down into the legs, you start to move that leg a little bit, then the movement will override the pain. So, yep, that's what we find oftentimes with the restless leg. So again, just it's a neurological kind of component here. If we look at subluxations, they are caused by nerve irritation, and it's an interference in your body's innate ability to heal and remain healthy. So subluxations lead to more stress on the nervous system, which leads to more stress in the body and more higher cortisol levels, which then can lead to a less good quality of sleep. And it's cumulative. So the things that cause subluxations, yes, there may be events that occur, that there's jarring of the spine, a car accident, a sports injury, a slip or a fall, but most of the time it's the life that happens in between those events that is the accumulation of bad habits, poor posture, what we call micro traumas. So rather than the events of macro traumas, the micro traumas that are ongoing in between those events are the things that really will push these subluxation patterns and make them persistent. Bad habits, sitting, tech stressed, or tech neck, we call it. People that are like sniffing the screen all day, falling asleep on the couch, you know, bad habits like that, on their iPhone or their iPad at night, like, you know, we've covered it already. It's a big issue. And postural stresses are also cumulative, and they are cumulative micro stresses that will cause problems. The forward head posture is one of the biggest things that we see as the result of tech neck or tech stress. You know, you put a cell phone out in front of this guy and it looks like the most common posture we see these days. You see it everywhere. And so that head, if that head is like a bowling ball, when it starts to go forward, that same 12-pound head, when it's over the center of gravity, the body has to manage 12 pounds. But when the 12 pounds moves forward, it now is the equivalent of 32 pounds. And the further forward it goes, the more stress it is, the more it costs us, the more demand it is on us. And we literally have research that shows that that forward head carriage, it puts pressure on the brain stem, which lives right at the top of the spine. And because the brain stem has all the control centers for all the organ systems, when the head goes forward, we have research that shows that the further out in front the head is of the shoulder, it literally can take years off your life. So paying attention to posture is so important. Look, none of us gals ever want to get that humpback, that dowager's hump. But this is what this kind of poor posture is leading to. And it's the most unhealthy positions. It affects our viscera, our organs. It's not as easy to breathe. It affects our lungs, our heart. And when this is what we're like all day long, you know, this is what the modern person is turning into. So how would you know if you had subluxations? We use 5 objective criteria to measure that. We use instrumentation, motion palpation, static palpation, posture. We use x-rays. All of these things are helping to identify the subluxation. We use HRV as a way to show us if the nervous system is in a mode that it can repair, or is it in a current stress load that is impairing our ability to adapt to our stresses. So when we see somebody here, this is the bullseye where we want to see them land. The white dot is that person. And so as I'm working with folks, anybody that is not moving towards the bullseye, it's somebody whose body is aging before its time. So we have ways of measuring this. And this often correlates this sympathetic dominance. When the little dot goes to the left, it correlates with high cortisol levels. If that little dot starts to go over to the right, that's when you're starting to move into exhaustion level because your cortisol levels have been too high for too long. And if you're not getting restful sleep, that's going to be a problem. So not getting restful sleep is one of the prime factors that will drop the resilience and the adaptability down in the body. We have our thermal scan that measures how the nervous system is affecting the organs and the tissues and the circulation in the body. And so it is the thermal scan can help us see which organs are being affected. So the adrenal glands are controlled from here. So if the adrenal glands are not working properly, then that could be telling us that there's just really high cortisol levels, that those adrenal glands are just in maximum stress. And that can help as we get better nerve supply to the adrenals, that can help the adrenals perform better. And as you can see, this is the nerve supply. This is the nerve supply L4-5 that goes right down into the circulation in the legs and so on. Now, the surface EMG is a scan that evaluates the function of the nervous system that controls the function of your muscles. So it can tell us where there's spasming in the body. So that's the way to evaluate that. And so if you don't know if you're subluxated, then this is what we need to do to measure that, to know how well you're adapting to the current stresses that you're under. Many people will measure their blood pressure and their blood sugar and their cholesterol, and they're measuring all kinds of things, their BMI, all of those kinds of things, even measuring your weight with a scale. Those are things you can measure. But how many people are measuring their nervous system, which is what's controlling the blood pressure and controlling the metabolism and so on? So again, we have to get checked if we want to know whether or not we're adapting to our stresses and whether or not we have subluxations. Now, how about let's talk about sleep postures. So when you're sleeping, you want to have the neck having a curve to it, but not too much of a curve. So we don't want the head down below it. And when you're sleeping on your side, you don't want too small of a pillow where your neck is going to be tipping downwards. If you are sleeping, you want to have a good support of your neck so that you have a good curve in the neck, and so that the center of the head is kind of still lined up with the center of the shoulders. Sleeping on your side, again, you want the center of the head lined up with the center of the spine so the spine can stay straight. So you want the right amount of pillow here. And you also don't want too much. So this is kind of like Goldilocks, right? Where you want to have just the right amount. So too much pillow that puts your head into flexion is not going to be good. And too much pillow that tips your head sideways, like sleeping on the couch, would be an example of this, that can give us trouble. So these are the best, this is the best sleep posture here. On your back, good support of the neck, and on your side, good support so your head is level. And what about pillows and beds and so on? So the Sleep Number bed is a really great bed because you can change the firmness of it. And that is, we have a Sleep Number bed from a long time ago, and we still use the same one. We have had to replace some of the buffers in it, but otherwise it's been in great shape, and it's been 25 years that we've had that same mattress, and it's still working for us, just with some little improvements that we have to make now and then. So it's a great investment. There's also another mattress I'd like to tell you about. It's called BioPosture. And this is a mattress that is made with no toxic chemicals. And it's made right in the US, and it's the only mattress that I know of that is made to order right here in the US. And you can even get a letter of medical necessity so that it can be made without the chemical fire retardants in it. And so this is another great mattress to have. It's a little bit higher upscale than the Sleep Number bed, but again, it has a great design to it. And it has no carcinogenic chemicals in it, even though it does use a memory foam to it. It's made in a way that is not carcinogenic. So again, another option for you. I just want to stop the screen share for 1 minute because I need to fix one of these slides here. This one. Unhide. Okay, now it's going to show up for all of you to see. All right, so people ask me about, what's the best pillow to use. We used to always promote the Proper pillow. That was literally the name of it. And that company, I don't know what happened, but they don't make them anymore. And it was my favorite pillow of all time. So we have found a replacement for it. And it's from Core Products. So we're going to be stocking it in the office again. But you can see that actually is a very interesting shape for a pillow. And so it's good for lying on your back as well as lying on your side. And then it comes in different sizes so that you can get the right dimension for your body type as well. So we'll be having those in the office, and we'll let you know when they arrive. All right, so the 3 steps to correct the cause of subluxations is breaking the bad habits that keep causing those subluxations, adding the specific exercises in to get your spine strong so you can live fully during your waking hours, and not have, get injured because you've hurt yourself by doing too much because you weren't strong enough. So getting good exercises in, and also exercises that will remold the proper shape of the spine as well. And then the chiropractic adjustments that correct the subluxations so that you have that optimum nerve supply, so the brain is tracking where the body's in space accurately and can run the body accurately. So if you can't sleep, step 1, get adjusted. Step 2, sleep well. And we have so many people that have given us great testimonials over time of the great, that's one of the side benefits that many people are not aware of, that chiropractic care can lead to better sleep. So one woman, she talked about how her IBS was better, her posture was better, and she was also getting more sleep and having more energy. Another fellow is a carpenter. He always woke up early in the morning, even when he went to bed late at night, and he would always wake up at 4 a.m. and that was it. So he was used to actually only getting about 5 hours of sleep. And then once he started to get adjusted, he actually was able to get 7.5 hours. And even if he woke up at 4 a.m., he was able to go right back to sleep and get the rest of the sleep that he needed. So that was a big, profound change in his quality of life. So we know that, how do you want to live your life? Do you want to just be barely making it and always running on empty? Or do you want to be fully charged with full power to live your life in the fullest way possible? My last slide is just a recognition that you've learned a lot tonight, and there are some action steps that you're going to want to be taking. And I just want to remind you that procrastination is the thief of health. If you snooze, you lose. So I really want you to think about the things you've learned and what is the number one thing that you could do, even starting tonight, that could help you to get back into better sleep hygiene. Because remember, sleep is king. Sleep is not a luxury. Sleep trumps everything. Sleep is the most important thing, and it affects everything else. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm going to stop the recording right now. And I'm going to answer any questions that any of you folks may have.